Welcome back to The Health Hunt, a human, humble, and occasionally claustrophobic exploration of all things health. As we talked about in a previous episode, we discussed the emotional side of booking a full-body MRI at Prenuvo. The health anxiety, the what-if spiral, the fear of finding something you can't unknow. This was about the lead-up to actually getting an MRI. Well, today, we're talking about what it's actually like inside the machine. Once again, this is an honest and raw conversation about a very real experience. Now, spoiler alert, one of us handled this calmly, the other one, not so much. You're going to have to listen to this episode to find out who that was. So let's get into it. Just as a reminder, because I kind of alluded to this, but this episode is a follow-up to a previous episode, which if you're looking at the episode list is episode 19, where we discussed our thoughts and feelings about these scans that we were getting at Prenuvo. So if you really want to sort of go down this journey with us from start to finish, then you might want to go back and start there. And also as a reminder, and to maintain our theme of being transparent here on this podcast, Prenuvo gifted us these scans so that we could share our experiences with the audience, but there was no expectation that we would say anything positive. So this is not a sponsored testimonial. It's just our honest experience, including the part where I almost had nothing to share.
So episode 19, if you're going to get a Prenuvo scan, and this is maybe a reason to a catalyst for you to do it, listen to episode 19 because I want the listener or listeners to kind of feel the trajectory that we were on because it's very real. And so if you're feeling or taking away some of the things that we talked about 19 and then today and then a subsequent episode we're having on Prenuvo, it's a very much a logical progression that would normalize it for you and make you feel like you're, not alone.
Absolutely. And that's always kind of our goal here. So I guess the best place to start is, let's go back to the day before. Again, we talked about how we felt, going into it, but the day before you get an email and it tells you sort of how to prepare for your arrival and the things that you can and cannot do. So it tells you that you can't have any food 4 hours before. And just for context, we did our scans at 10:45 in the morning. And actually, if you're listening to this, we did them yesterday. So this is really raw and really fresh. So no food. Then the part that mortified me was that you can't wear any makeup. Dan was okay with this part. And any kind of really like skincare products, creams especially. And so apparently there could be particles of, metals. They use really clean products, but there's certain things in makeup and skin cream, things like that, that could show up on an MRI and kind of show like a false result. So the reason this freaks me out is because I don't really go out without makeup. And again, I talked about how this is my own issue. Need to work on this, probably need some therapy. But I like to have eyeliner and mascara. This is not, and sometimes my skin's not good. So this, I told my sister I might not go, but obviously I wasn't going to do that.
Well, the ultimate compliment, Sandy, is that you did go and you were in front of me. So if you can be, and you looked fine, by the way, but without the makeup, you were in front of me and I felt like it was a big compliment because you were able to share that time with me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're always in makeup, but again, it's in your head. You look fine, but.
Well, I am when anyone sees me, but also you may not have noticed I was wearing sunglasses inside the whole time. I'm just uncomfortable. But anyway, I got past it. I showed up in public with no makeup. But the weird thing is that, so I don't eat in the morning. I've talked about this, especially when we were doing the continuous glucose monitor episodes. I'm not a morning eater. I never have been. So for me, not eating before I went to the scan was no big deal, except how when someone tells you not to do something, it's all you wanted to do. And so I was starving. It was the weirdest thing. All I could think about was eating. And then also in the morning, I have my matcha tea, which has all kinds of stuff in it. So I couldn't have that. I also drink electrolytes with extra vitamins and things like that. And I didn't ask them about this, but I checked with ChatGPT and some other resources, and it said that I shouldn't have those things. So in my brain, I felt I had water, but I felt dehydrated. I thought I was going to pass out. I'm like, how am I going to even walk in there? I'm a weak human. It was just like all the things that they told me I couldn't do were somehow now things that I wanted to do.
Yeah, I think if you're a breakfast person, that's like part of your regimen, not part of mine either. I can go to like 2 p.m. without eating. It's just kind of like how my body works. But, then 10:45, you could slide in a breakfast if you wake up really early.
Yeah, I wasn't going to do that.
I tend to kind of think that you just have nothing if you're going to do a 10:45. But if you really need food, then, maybe postpone it to like an afternoon MRI and then get that breakfast in or something. But, the food thing does matter. And then all the things Sandy said do matter. I didn't have any of those issues. Carry on. We're good.
No, so I'm clearly a neurotic. I mean, again, I probably wasn't going to die without my electrolytes, but I had them in the car, and the second that I was done, I rushed and drank a bottle of electrolyte water. I just really thought I was going to die. But I wanted to talk about one other thing too. So I think, Dan, you had maybe done this about something else, but I called them a few days before the scan for a couple things. Because first of all, I've talked about having a hip and knee replacement, and when I was doing the medical background, I put in the dates of when I got these things, and there was a mention that you should call because potentially ones that are a certain age are a problem, and not specifically the joint replacements, but like my hip is 30 years old. It's not new, but I don't think the technology's changed much. So I wanted to call them and just let them know because I didn't want to show up and have them say I had an old hip.
Sandy, when you called, did you call the Boca Raton office, or was it like more of a general company number?
Looked up the Boca Raton office. I called that number, but I think it went through to more of a general number. I don't think I spoke to like a receptionist specifically there. Whoever I spoke to was super helpful and walked me through that stuff. And then we talked about the claustrophobia. So apparently I had marked off that I wasn't claustrophobic, which is a lie. I don't know why I did that. Maybe I think because the follow-up question is, are you going to take medication? And I thought it was talking about like Xanax or Valium, which I didn't want to take because I had stuff to do later. And also it could make me nauseous. So I didn't want to be nauseous inside the machine. But they do prescribe you, because they can't give you the stronger medications, but they can prescribe what I understand now is like an antihistamine. So I guess kind of almost like a Benadryl. So maybe that makes you a little bit sleepy. It's supposed to calm you down. So I was like, sure, why not? I'll get it. So they give you 3 pills. They tell you could take 2 before you go and a third one if you really need it. So I took 1 because I also wasn't sure if it was going to make me sleepy, and I decided to drive myself. But so the point of this is that like they were very helpful on the phone. They answered a lot of questions. They were very pleasant. And so I appreciated that experience.
Yeah. So this is the interesting dichotomy of this is Sandy's talking about the medicine she took and just the getting into the machine and just that whole experience, and she'll expound on that a little bit. But for me, the question I asked when I walked into the front desk was, can I take a nap in the scene? Like as in like I would like to, it would be like I would love it. Like the sounds would all make me sleepy and I would literally fall asleep. And I've done this before in other MRIs where I haven't had to breathe, and we'll talk about the breathing, where I just went to sleep. Just knocked me out. And so point being, summary is that each individual has an entirely different experience approaching the MRI. It should be, and either is, it is what it is, but you feel the same type of nerves, but just the focus for Sandy was getting through the MRI. The focus for me, that part wasn't an issue. So, but it's very real for both people.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And so, it turns out in the morning, if you don't do an elaborate skincare routine and don't do a full face of makeup, it doesn't take you very long to get ready. And so I was ready super early. I think I got there 15, 20 minutes ahead of the 30-minute window, when you're supposed to get there. So I was sort of by myself, but the waiting room is really nice. You kind of feel like you're in a spa. It's relaxing music. It smells nice. The decor is nice. It's not a huge waiting room. And when I got there, no one else is there. They only have, I guess they have 3 MRI machines. So there can't be that many people ever at any time. And, the receptionist was very nice when I walked in. The first thing they do is they give you a tablet. And so you could choose a movie or show on Netflix. You could also choose to listen to music on Spotify, but we'll talk about in a minute why I think that the Netflix option is better. But it's cool. Like I've been watching like Bridgerton. And so I went back on my phone. I figured out what episode I was on. I chose that. I knew it was something that I wanted to see. So, that was a good experience.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. You walk in, I think I might have mentioned to Sandy, I was looking for possible rentals in that I would live there because it was so nice and clean, bigger than my apartment, obviously. But no, they're nice offices. They have everything, they've thought about the beginning, middle, and end of the experience. And so I think they've got that fairly nailed, and I was impressed.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a medical office. It feels more spa-like. So the one thing so then because Dan was asking questions, and so obviously I was sitting there and I heard, and for some reason I had it in my head that aside from like the brain part, my head would be out of the MRI machine. And so I learned in the waiting room that that's not the case. So a little bit of panic set in. And sort of up to that point, I was feeling okay. I didn't, I don't know if I slept well. I think I was dreaming about it a little bit, but I didn't really feel as anxious as I thought I might. So I kind of had this, like, I got this vibe. And then that maybe threw me off a little bit.
Just as a foreshadow, and you'll see why this matters later, Sandy's MRI process started 10 minutes before mine. And, which was, fine. But like, I just, was like, wow, I'd like to be 10:45 in that machine. But, but we'll tell you why that matters towards the end.
Yeah. And then, so the next thing is they get a room ready for you and you go in and you change. And so you have scrubs to put on, little booties, I guess, but you get to wear your socks and underwear. Everything else goes and you wear the scrubs. And so Dan can share this, but he loved the scrubs. Me, not so much. I can't believe people wear these, for their 29-hour shifts because they're kind of itchy. They have no give. They're like oversized, but I don't know. I was concerned that I'm very sensitive to fabrics and things. Like I don't like them to tag in my shirt, but I don't know. I was a little concerned that it was going to bother me. Once I got in it was fine, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of the next step.
Yeah, and they fit well. I'm not sure if it was like a men or a females version, or they have like these, they order just one oversized and everyone has like their own type of experience in the oversized. But it sat well on the shoulders. I like the bagginess. And the material was a little stiff, but not itchy for me. But could have made a cute picture, but didn't think to take a picture of.
I did. I took a picture.
I didn't. See, I missed those moments. You're smarter than I am. But yeah, so we're in the scrubs.
Okay, so why don't you share what happens next on your end? You're going into your MRI machine.
Yeah, so you sit there with the door open and you wait for the MRI med tech to come, pick you up and take you back to where the MRI machines are. And the med tech will, I think I heard the med techs, and they generally ask the same questions. I think there was some variability to that. I think there were some other questions that were asked, but typical questions. Sandy went over some, have you had a surgery? Are you wearing a CGM or any medical device? Do you have any like metal in your body? Are you sick? Or, just, there's a couple other ones that I'm probably missing some important ones. So one thing to know, they take you back into this massive kind of back office of MRI machines. It's like all dark, obviously. And there's like med tech desks, 3 of them, because Sandy mentioned there's 3 machines. And the one thing that you'll initially notice as you walk in is that the room is like 20 degrees, 30 degrees.
It's like frigid. It's frigid.
And so the first thing they're trained to say is that yes, the room is cold. And when you get in the machine, everything will warm up due to the heat of the machine. And that is the case. At least it was for me. Sandy will tell you about her experience. But the only thing I was concerned about with getting in was that I had neck support because I have a really bad neck, which they had. And, there's a ball that you actually have to hold in case there's an emergency. I was well aware of that because that's similar to other MRI machines. And then I noticed that the audio for the headphones, the earplugs, was better than most MRI machines, meaning that you're in this machine and there's loud sounds, but I could hear the med tech, I could hear the movie, and I had earplugs in and headphones on, and so that audio experience was pretty good. But I'll stop there, Sandy. I guess I'll let you.
No, I think you should go through the whole experience because mine's very different.
Okay. So they obviously put like a ton of, I don't want to call them plates on you, but you're covered in whatever you're covered in. And then I had James Bond movie on. I've seen it like 10 times, but I couldn't figure out what the hell I wanted to watch. And so I'm like, I always like a good intro James Bond that'll get me 25 minutes in. So I will tell you this. I'm not sure who else does this, but there's a flat screen in the back where the Netflix plays this movie and then it mirrors to inside the MRI. And the visibility of the movie changes as the MRI machine moves.
Yeah.
In like a really smart way. And so effectively, if you kind of get past, like if you're nervous about getting MRI machines, if you effectively get past like in an MRI machine watching a movie and you focus on the movie, it really does a nice job of speeding the process along, but also capturing that you're not in a tube. It makes you feel less like you're in a coffin. And It was honestly, that expectation, that exceeded my expectation. I was super impressed by that technology. And it's not like a sophisticated technology, but it really worked well. And so, um, running through everything, I think all of the MRI went smooth for me. There was, a one part, but it wasn't on the brain. It was doing kind of like your middle body where there would be excessive breath holding. That could be an issue for some, not others. I think generally it's more important that, after you take a breath in and a breath out, that you're not just like kind of breathing heavy. I mean, if you can't hold your breath long and you have to like let some air out, like that's fine. But like if you're like, breathing really heavy while they're, testing and taking images of parts, that's not going to work. And so, but the technician did a really good job of prompting all of that, at least mine did. And I would just so I don't forget, the technicians were great. They're very professional. I think they've probably seen it all. Mine was very positive. One could say that, and I'm sure people think about this when they're getting MRIs is, God, I think I mentioned this to Sandy after. I'm like, God, those med techs like are seeing my scans. When they take me out of my bed, MRI bed, are they like, do they know something about me and my medical history that I should know? Or are they, putting on the smiley poker face? You look at them and like, maybe some people always like look at them and like, God, like they're not smiling as much. Is there something wrong with me?
They must know. Yeah. They must have seen a brain tumor. They don't know what to do. And now they just have to escort me out and never think about me again.
And I know that people must think that. I've done 2 brain MRIs. I've done 2 neck MRIs. So, you kind of always think that, but they are moving so fast at, not fast in a bad way. They're so efficient and aggressively, because these scans, people want these scans. Maybe South Florida is affluent and, whatever. And so there's markets that are such that where there's, no appointments to get, but they're turning over 3 MRIs pretty much on time and people in waiting in the rooms. So this med tech, after she's like, took all my stuff off really quick, she's like, thank you. She's like, I'll escort you out if you want some coffee and some treats afterwards.
Yeah, they had a snack room.
But like, she like opened the door and she was like on to the next. And I was just like, which validated a few things. One is that this is very busy. People want these people want to know about their bodies. And 2 is that there's no way she had enough time to like understand or know anything about my body in that moment because how fast they're moving. And so that was my take. I think that's, Sandy, unless there's something you want to ask, that kind of sums up my experience.
Yeah, I think, I didn't have any thoughts when I got out, except for I was out of the machine. So I wasn't worried about what she may have seen, but
turn it over to Sandy.
Okay. Well, let's start with, I almost had nothing to talk about today. So I told you, I went in feeling okay, a little freaked out when they said my head would be inside. And then, so yeah, you lay on the table and I had already been kind of worried about, like, cause I have a lot of stiffness and pain and things. And I was worried about not being able to move for 45 minutes to an hour. And then the first thing I noticed, Dan kind of said the same thing, is you lay down and my head was much flatter than I usually am, which makes me almost feel like I'm choking or I'm upside down and then I'm nauseous. So that panicked me a little bit. I didn't think to ask to prop my head up. I didn't know if that was an option. So I kind of just sucked that up. And then you have to sit with your, hands beside you, which was another problem for me. They gave me a little pillow for under my knees, which I was happy about because I was kind of worried about that as well. The problem is that my right elbow, which was the first joint that I ever had a problem with, does not straighten. And I haven't put it at my side for 30 years. And so it was very awkward for me to not have it resting on my thigh. So I go to a lot of vet appointments. The MRI tech, I had a feeling I was going to say that. The MRI tech, whose name was Katie, and I have to give her a shout out because she was awesome. She was able to kind of put something under my elbow and then something under my wrist. So I was able to keep it on the side. And then, like Dan said, they put this, she calls it a weighted blanket, but that's just the euphemism for some kind of heavy thing over your chest. So that goes on. That was a little uncomfortable because of my arm with my right hand was kind of raised a little bit. I could feel it on my knuckles. And then I started to panic. It was going to bother me for an hour. So she fixed it a little bit. And then they're ready to slide you in. And so what Dan was describing about the movie, it's not actually in the MRI machine. They put this kind of cap on you, and the cap has almost like I don't even know how to explain it because I didn't see it clearly, but it has kind of a visor, I guess, on it. And that's what the movie reflects onto. So you're looking at the visor. So they tell you to focus on that as they're sliding you in. My show hadn't started yet. Something else was on and it wasn't playing. And again, I was a little nervous. I felt okay, but I did focus on the screen. But I probably because I had had an MRI before, when they put me in the machine, I knew I was in the machine. And I had an immediate wave of sheer terror and panic. And I felt like a rush of blood to the head. I felt like I couldn't breathe. And I immediately, I don't know if I squeezed it or if I yelled, I was like, take me out of here. And then, I don't know. So she took me out. She took all the stuff off me because I felt claustrophobic with all this stuff on me. And we had talked about this before. Dan said he likes to put something over his eyes and ears and all these things. And that to me feels horrible. So I sat up. She brought me some water and I sat there for a minute, tried to do my 4-7-8 breathing and just tell myself I wasn't going to die in there. But I could feel that I really wasn't coming out of the nerves. And then that caused me to panic because obviously I wanted to get through this experience. I'm grateful that we have this opportunity. I didn't want to mess it up. She's standing there. And again, she was very kind to me and patient. But I went through probably in 5 to 10 minutes an entire series of emotions, mostly beating myself up. What's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? Like be a big girl, And I was embarrassed. Because I wasn't calming down, I didn't know how I was going to get myself in a state to lay back down, knowing I was going in there for like 45 minutes to an hour. And then just decided to suck it up. Like the big girl pants that disintegrated when I first went in, pulled them off the floor metaphorically and put them back on. And what we'd also decided too was that she would start playing the show that I was supposed to be watching so that there was like some movement and things like that. And I just like fast forwarding, I can tell you, and I shared this with her too, in case anyone else. And again, I know they see a lot of people that have claustrophobia and that freak out. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I didn't get off the table. I didn't run out and never come back. But I can tell you that it definitely helped when the show was playing because then there was movements and there's subtitles too because when the machine gets loud, sometimes it's hard to hear. But so I think that helped. And so I just told myself I wasn't going to die. And, I really, really stared at this screen. And the way the screen looks is it almost looks like you're watching a movie because you can see the screen and then you can see all the space around it. So it kind of gives you the perspective of being far away from it. And that makes it feel more expansive inside the space. Like really, as I noticed that, I started to kind of make sure that my brain kept thinking about it that way. And 45 minutes to an hour later, I somehow got through it. And I was super proud of myself because honestly, I had moments, I didn't think I was going to get back in. I felt that panic and I just kind of assumed that I'd be able to calm myself down and I couldn't. And so I just couldn't fathom going back in. But again, Katie was awesome. She helped me kind of get comfortable and there was no judgment. I didn't feel like I was being rushed or anything because again, I know they're on a tight schedule. So we got through it and I'm grateful that I did it, but it almost didn't happen. I was sitting here thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have to tell the chief medical officer that I didn't do it because I'm such a wimp.
I mean, hey, you can do all the things. You have to be like telling yourself, I can do all things. I can do all things. I can do all things. And honestly, because that's such an experience that I would never have, I am, but I'm kind of totally appreciating and understanding how raw it is. You should be proud of yourself that you got through that. That's like really, there's a stigma there. It's a real fear. I know a bunch of people who have that fear. I have fears in other ways, but you should tap yourself in the shoulder. That's a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I felt okay going into it. So I didn't think that was going to happen. But I think there was probably some muscle memory about the first MRI. So once I was in, I just literally, I felt the entire world closing in on me. And it was tough. Like Dan mentioned, they do move you up and down through the machine. And so the screen size changes because you get closer to the screen that's on the back of the wall. Yeah. So it was still a challenge. Once I was in there, I had to really kind of, because once it started, there was no way I was coming out. Oh, and kind of a funny story. So when I got back in, I was like, I started to feel okay about it. And then I noticed that she pulled me out. And I'm like, what is going on? And apparently, I guess because it taken so long for me to get into it, the machine reset. It just reset. I don't know what that means, but that's how she explained it. So I had to wait. And I decided not to sit up. I just kind of laid there under all these things I was on. But yeah, so that probably also caused some of the delay because it had to restart or something. So I just had to really stay in the moment because every time I moved, it reminded me, and the breathing was a little stressful, scary because some of the times that you had to hold your breath felt excessively long. And I already felt like dehydrated and stressed and everything. So that was a little challenging. And like you said, I could have taken the slightest breath without moving, but I was dedicated to getting through this without any issues because I didn't want to delay it or have to redo anything. So it was very meticulous about, the holding the breath part.
Sandy's a rule follower and she's a perfectionist. So if there's a challenge to hold the breath, she's going to hold the breath.
Yeah.
And you have to respect that. So that was the spoiler was when I walked out starting 10 minutes after Sandy, she wasn't in the lobby. I was thinking, she'd be waiting for me and like we'd do like our little refresh and download and she wasn't there. And I'm like, oh boy. I'm like, there's definitely going to be a story when she gets out of it. And so I was just kind of like, I'll just sit down and chill and talk to the front desk people because they were really, really nice. And then I think was maybe but less than 10 minutes, Sandy walked out and then she obviously shared what her experience was.
Yeah. And I got to say, it took me hours to feel like a functional human again. Like I was not okay when I came out. I was still in a heightened state of anxiety. I was somewhat conversational, but I just didn't feel okay. I got home. I just needed a couple hours to decompress because I was just in such this elevated state. But again, I was proud of myself for getting through it again. Like props to my tech, Katie, because she was like very, kind and patient. I didn't feel like she was rushing me, but I was, in classic me style, judging myself.
I mean, med techs, MRI med techs are not, as far as I remember or know, in the business of customer service. Like they kind of just, all of them have been nice, but these med techs, at least, the one that Katie, that Sandy's talking about, I unfortunately forgot the name of mine, but shout out to her. They were really good. They're really understanding. I think Prenuvo must put time into personalities there and how they're interacting with people that are coming in because of just all of the different things happening in their head when they're going through this experience. So I'm going to give a shout out to Prenuvo in that regard. I think it's just, I was really impressed.
Yeah. And so again, like I don't know, I don't realize how claustrophobic I am until I'm in a situation, but even on an airplane, I don't like sitting in the window. I feel like I can't escape. And again, that first MRI I had, I knew that was a problem. So if I can get through this, I think most people probably can. And I was impressed at sort of all of the little things that they have in place to help people like me.
There you go.
Okay, so I guess the last thing is, so when we also, when we left, there's two receptionists and they were very pleasant and seemed really to enjoy their jobs and kind of excited about everything. And so we had asked some questions about what to expect with the results. And so they confirmed that they're emailed. They said it doesn't always take 10 days because Dan had kind of asked them like why it would take that long. They said it doesn't always take that long. And so you get a full report. And then subsequent to that, they schedule a call with a nurse to just preliminarily go over it. Now, I'm sure if there's something more, maybe, I don't know if this is something that the chief medical officer will have to tell us about. I don't know if then they have people that can talk to you more or if they give you recommendations on who to talk to for follow-up. But I had made a joke like, I'm going to get my results and have to interpret them. And they thought that meant that I thought I wasn't going to understand it, but that wasn't my concern. My concern was that I'm going to read all of this stuff and freak out before somebody can hold my hand and walk me through it. So that we'll have to see how that plays out because I think, Dan, you did a little more research on what these reports entail.
Yeah. I think the 7 to 10 business days probably is a function of two things. It's a function of they probably have a growing customer base and, I'm not sure if I don't think radiologists fall off trees. And so there's got to be, they're trying to find good ones. And so there's volume. My assumption is we can clarify this with the chief medical officer is that the radiologists probably aren't working weekends. And so they cite it in business days because my understanding is probably, they get it on a Monday and they're getting these in order of how they've been recorded. And then they're thoroughly, I think, going through several layers of one, making a general assessment, taking some deeper dives, and then printing these reports out. So you're getting radiologists' eyes and ears on these things, but then you're getting the conversation and appointment with nurse practitioners. Maybe at some point that'll be doctors as well, but that's kind of seems how it goes. And then I think just as you get the report, as to Sandy said, I think the part that clues you in if you don't understand the big words, when you're in that kind of point where like you're left with a report, but you have no one to talk to about it, would be the color coding of green, yellow, and red, of maybe a potential severity, or of, whether or not it requires follow-up. So again, it's a lot. I mean, there's really no good way of getting this information. It just is what it is. You get it. It's the reality. And then you have to just kind of learn and process it. But from people that I've talked to that have taken these things, you're going to get a lot of information back, especially if you're, in your 40s or above, and, you've lived half of your life. Your body is not brand new. And so there's going to be a lot of words, and there's going to be a lot of things that exist, some microscopic, some, that are completely normal. You're probably going to hear words, and I've told saying cyst, nodule. There are other words, and sizes, and, there's a lot. And so if you're coming in and you're hyper vigilant about it and super sensitive, which I can tend to be for sure, you just kind of can't get overwhelmed. You kind of just have to take a step back and just take it in and then process, because, Sandy's a perfectionist. I am a perfectionist in some ways, especially when it comes to health and wellness. And so, I'm going to see things and I'm going to be like, there's a thing, like that's not perfect. That's like, there's like a bunch of things. And so you have to kind of go through those motions.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm going to get overwhelmed. I can tell myself not to. And same thing as telling myself, like, I'm just laying in an MRI machine. I lay in my bed and nothing bad happens. It doesn't matter that there's sort of kind of a tube covering me, but I'll probably have some sort of reaction and I'll just have to manage it. Maybe we'll talk about it.
I mean, the best way to compare it is maybe like you go to Quest Labs, or if you're going to LabCorp, and like you take all these all this biomarkers, and then if people have done this, you get your results back and they're either green or red. And so you always gravitate towards the red ones because they're out of range.
Of course. I don't want reds.
Yeah, no one wants reds. And so you just have to that's kind of how you're going to see the report. There's going to be color codings. And, that if you obsess about those things, it's going to be something you need to just kind of be comfortable with and prepare yourself for that. You're going to get stuff back and it's going to be visual. And if you just kind of like zip through it visually and you see a color you don't like, I don't want to make a blanket statement, but you're not dying. You just, but it's trying to give you clues as to what you might have to investigate further. And, that's the point of this. It's if you're all green, as they say in my religion, mazel tov, like, well, but you're probably not going to be. And I know that I'm not going to be, and I'm preparing for that.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way that my elbow that I haven't been able to straighten in 30 years comes up looking great. I mean, it's
going to be awfully bloody in the next for me. Very bloody.
Yeah. So I'm not really scared about things that I know. If it tells me my right knee that's still a real one is messed up, like, that's not shocking. So those reds won't freak me out, but I'm sure there's going to be some level of anxiety. I can't imagine there won't be. So
yeah, I mean, I think it'll probably be like, so most common cause of cancer is lung cancer. I've had friends that they've picked up stuff and gotten it removed. So you're going to see nodules. There's going to be things on your lungs. There just are, and so sometimes the size of those things can matter, but you just have to know that your lungs aren't clean. Like we're in our late 40s. You've lived life, and so you just kind of have to know there's going to be some things that are going to show up. It's just what it is. You just want to know. And so there's no really easy way or graceful way of saying it, but we're not 20.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I hate that you keep reminding me that we're in our late 40s. But anyway, that's fine.
But you have age dysmorphia, so you don't care.
Well, yes, but that makes it complicated. Anyway, that's a whole other episode. So All right, so here we are. If you've ever wondered whether you could handle a full body MRI or if health anxiety shows up before your medical tests, we hope this episode made you feel less alone. And this conversation's not over. In an upcoming episode, we'll be sitting down with Prenuvo's chief medical officer to talk about how full body MRIs work, who they're for, what they're not for, and how to think about preventative screening without spiraling into worst case scenarios. So if you're curious about proactive health, nervous system regulation, or how to make informed decisions without fear driving the bus, make sure you're following the show. And if this episode resonated, share it with someone who's MRI curious but slightly claustrophobic. And if you're enjoying the health hunt, following, rating, and leaving a review generally helps us more than you know, because it helps other health hunters find conversations that are honest, not polished, and occasionally involve a near meltdown in a giant magnetic tube. We'll see you next time.